Mikhail, the beer ambassador here, and I'm sitting actually in the living room with my friend Bob Kiefer, who I met at HomebrewCon, and he's a homebrewer. We're both, in the Costa Mesa area. I used to live in Costa Mesa, but he still does. And the long and the short are, he's a really cool guy, but he has a unique perspective on beer because he's one of the gluten-free people. Right, and I don't say that in a bad way, but he has a gluten problem or issue where he has celiac signs, and he decided I really have this passion for beer and I don't want to give up beer, so why don't we not just make a gluten beer and use some findings to try and get most of it out, but why don't we go from a different perspective where we're going to actually make a gluten-free from the base up. Is that pretty much it?
Yeah, I mean, just if you're going to reduce the gluten, why not just make it without gluten in the first place? Yeah.
So I mean, it was cool to meet you, and what I was impressed that you had the booth there at HomebrewCon is that you told me about this concept. Come by, try the beers. I came by, try the beers, and I thought they were really good. And there's a couple you had there. I think it was the IPA that we might get to that I was like, if you hadn't told me, I don't know if I would have known that this wasn't. That this was a gluten-free IPA, and I enjoyed Omission, and there's one from I think I've tried the one from Stone, but I also have the one from Colorado, New Belgium. I don't know why that was
the glutiny or gluteny.
Yeah, the gluteny, which I thought was pretty good actually. But my understanding is they use findings to get most of the gluten out.
Yeah,
so it's like 99% or something.
Yeah, it's all about this whole legal aspect of parts per million, which it's always kind of tough, right?
But for some people, it's going to be completely fine. They don't have any issues.
So, yeah, a lot of people don't experience.
But there could be that percentage where you're still going to have issues.
Yeah, I think it's like about 1/3 of people don't have symptoms. About 2/3 of the other people do have symptoms. And so for people like me, I'm just like, well, it doesn't do anything. It's basically kind of like the way that it's. I don't think it's as severe as the whole Volkswagen clean diesel thing, but it's very similar to say if I took a handful of, let's say, peanuts, right? People are highly allergic to that. I walk up to somebody who has a peanut allergy and say, well, I just put a chemical on these peanuts that makes them totally cool for you to eat. What do you think?
I mean, that's a good way to put it, I guess.
I hear it from a good amount of people that are in the gluten-free brewing spectrum, if you will.
Sure.
They're
saying all you have to do is this. Right?
But that's the thing is it's while it's nice, it's still made from gluten-containing ingredients. And the thing that is tough is that even Forbes just came out with an article about how to tell if your beer is gluten-free or not. And the issue is that the ELISA test, which is what is currently being used to test these gluten-reduced beers, it can't detect the gluten, but that doesn't mean that the gluten isn't in there. That's the thing that's the issue is that it's having trouble detecting. It's a lot of the same, if you do a different test, you find gluten in those same beers.
I gotcha.
So that's the weird thing is the efficacy of the test that's being used is in question currently.
Yeah.
And so a lot of brewers just from the get-go have decided, well, if this is really about people's health, then why even use gluten-containing ingredients when you can use things like rice, millet, sorghum, buckwheat, quinoa,
rye.
No, you can't use
rye. You can't use rye.
That's rye, wheat, and
barley.
And barley. Those are the three ones.
Okay.
But outside of that, you're pretty much good to go. I mean,
so oats are good.
Yeah, certain. It has to be a certified grain, so that means that it just has to be grown in a field that's never grown wheat before.
Ah,
right. So
okay.
it's kind of a touchy one. Some people are touchy about oats. Some people are actually oat intolerant. So like I know Moon Shrimp Brewery in Portland is both gluten and oat free.
Okay.
I still use oats when I brew, just because I get gluten free ones. So that's how I do it. A lot of the gluten free maltsters actually sell oats as well, so that's another way to go through that.
But that's just new in the industry. That's not like a...
Oh yeah, it's very recent. I mean, I talk to guys, and there's a few people out there that still do this, where they go to the bird feed store, buy a 50-pound bag of millet, malt it at home, then roast it to their desired level, and then brew with that.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. They obviously you're wetting the malt. You're wetting the grains themselves to malt it, so they're already kind of washing it there. then they malt it, then they roast it, then they brew with it. Pretty
Yeah.
kind of cool. So I mean, this was like
I mean, talk about
as recent as 2012.
Talk about homebrew. You're like malting
Yeah,
your
own grains.
your own
Yeah.
grains.
It's a lot of the people that
Which,
first
if you don't know
pioneered
that,
this.
basically you're gonna have to put it in the oven.
Yeah.
And you're gonna have to bring it. You're gonna have to pay attention to bring it to a certain level for the SRM to make the special style that you want, and that takes a lot. And that's what the malting companies do.
Yeah,
You know?
so they do a lot of that grunt work for
Yeah.
people, and that's one of the things that I've probably been the most impressed by, is that, you know, yes, I am a gluten-free brewer, but I'm not the first, and I do really have to pay homage to the people on Homebrew Talk and, you know, the people that I've come in contact with in this space, who have really laid a lot of the groundwork for people like me. That, you know, I'm not doing this the first time. I'm learning from a lot of their mistakes before I'm brewing, which is one of the things that's pretty cool. You know, there was a lot of debate when I first got brewing with all grain gluten-free of what's the appropriate mash temperature. And
Interesting.
you ask 3 different brewers, you're going to get 6 different responses.
Yeah, because it's not something they're used to brewing with as a main ingredient.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
Well, barley usually just converts itself, or it converts the rice or the corn or whatever your other adjunct is.
sure.
So pretty much don't have to worry about it as long as you keep it around 150. You can keep both the beta and the alpha amylase.
Yeah.
That completely gets washed away when you start adding all these other grains. So like I recently did a mash that went like mashing at 135, raised to 185,
Yeah.
and that's the first hour, and then drop it back down to 155 for an hour and a half.
I got you.
And then do everything else. So you got to like both beta amylase rest as well as you know, a higher maybe like alpha amylase rest or something like that. But then also one of the rests in there involves the gelatinization of the grains too.
Sure.
So yeah, it's pretty.
So
you can
so
make it
this-
as complicated or as simple as you like.
Well, I mean,
basically.
beer is science. It's food science,
That's true,
right?
yeah,
But it sounds like a whole different level of food science for a gluten-free to me, really.
Yeah, well, that's what I said.
And that's why it's not been done, right?
Yeah,
I mean, it's taken this long to
Oh,
get
yeah.
to where you have, like, I mean, the mission's been around for a few years now, but
yeah,
still, I mean, it's taken a long time to get where they're at. And
true.
if they're not starting with a gluten-free base,
Yeah. They're actually missing out on a lot of customers that way, and that's the thing that's true. Like, I don't even go to this.
and this
local
is not
San
a
Diego
dig at
breweries.
Omission either, just so you
Oh, yeah,
know.
no.
But
They're doing the best they can, and,
Yeah.
and you know, with what they've got, and that's definitely something that people in this space, like myself, the gluten-free space, we appreciate it because it at least brings attention to
Yeah.
it, which is great. It's a great start.
yeah, and the
But
fact that it sells shows everybody else, well, this is a market.
Yeah, and that's the thing. That's one of the things that also people ask me. Well, is there a market for actual gluten-free, like a certified gluten-free, 100% gluten-free? And I'm
Yeah.
like, they just opened a gluten-free brewery in Tulsa, Oklahoma, so there's a market for
In
it.
the middle of
America.
farmlands,
The red
wheat,
country.
wheat and barley,
Yeah.
like Ville, like that's the farmlands.
Oh
right?
yeah, so there's definitely a market for it. I mean, you know, you
Wow.
look at Oregon itself has 4 dedicated gluten-free breweries alone. Washington has Ghostfish out of Seattle. There's also Departed Souls out of Jersey City, Holidaily out of Colorado,
I didn't realize there were that many.
Alt Brewing out of Wisconsin.
And these are all from the base.
Yep, all like
100%.
millet, buckwheat, rice, no
Wow.
barley, no wheat, no rye.
I'm gonna have to try some more beers then. and
Oh
figure that
yeah,
stuff out.
yeah, it's growing even bigger. Every year I'm just so much more impressed by how much more they're able to do in this space.
So, in that, so was it, but the fact is, you're finding out all this stuff now.
Yeah.
But it's not available locally, so that's why you started to brew it yourself and
That's
figure
true.
it out, right?
Well, yeah, I got tired of while they're good, there's only so much choice, and you usually get basic flavors because they want to bring it to the masses, right?
Yeah.
So you typically get a blonde, a pale ale, an IPA, and a white or a wit or some
Yeah.
sort of style like that.
Yeah.
And those are great, but for me, I'm a little bit more creative. My fiance runs her own gluten-free bakery, so I was like, well, if she's making her own gluten-free desserts, why can't I make my own gluten-free beer?
Well, it reminds me of Long Beach Beer Lab, although they're not gluten-free, but Levy's making beer and his wife has a bakery, and they have a business hand in hand. You guys might do the second thing.
Yeah.
And I'll have to introduce you sometime, but
Yeah.
so you started doing this as a home brewer. How long have you been home brewing?
I think I'm going on my 3rd year now.
Yeah. So relatively.
Yeah, relatively recent. I haven't been doing it for the longest time.
And you're still doing it in an apartment.
Yep.
Now, did you start with kits or because it's hard to find a gluten-free? Did you have to like kind of do everything yourself? Were you doing it on the stove, or you really got into it once you got the grandfather? Because you showed me.
Yeah.
He has a really nice grandfather, and you're making stuff on that.
Yeah. Well, luckily I had a friend who kind of encouraged me. He's like, I was talking about, hey, beer, gluten-free, and they're like, well, why don't you come over to our house? We've got some brewing equipment. You can, test batch of beer over there too. And so my first brew was a complete disaster because I really didn't know what I was doing. And they didn't kind of catch me because they're like, well, we're not used to brewing this way, so, go at it, have fun. So I had like 4 pounds of just regular oats, not even flaked, like store-bought steel-cut oats.
Ooh.
Yeah, so that right there is like the first indication of how the day went.
Oh my gosh. So it was all gummed up though.
It's just, we had to throw the whole thing away.
Oh.
Yeah, I was.
So they had no idea.
Yeah, they were like, oh, that's right. Oh yeah, I don't use oats like that either, so how could you? So they kind of realized that after the fact. They're like, all right, come over, we'll do it midweek, we'll let you come and do it on the evening.
Oh my gosh, that's funny.
It was an all-extract brew. I made it for a music festival I went to. It was passable. I could call it beer. Nice try. It ended up at like 4%. I wasn't too excited about it. So the next brew I did, okay, what are higher ABV beers? I was like, how big can I make it? I need to prove myself here. So I decided on a Belgian style.
Okay.
Right? And I decided that I was going to go for something as simple like a double. Right? Let's get it to 6%, and we'll go from there. But I decided to, since I hadn't had as much success on the first brew, I'm like, well, let's pour more in here, and maybe that's the reason. I just need more fermentables in here. Well, I got enough fermentables, and I got the sucker up to 12%.
Wow.
So, and it actually came out pretty good.
Talk about opposite ends of the spectrum, though. You went from like a 4% to a 12%.
Yeah, it's like a
4x beer there.
A session beer to a showstopper.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, I totally kind of went off the deep end.
But then you got everybody's attention with that.
Yeah, they were like, "Wow, and this is good." Like, I hadn't intended it to be stout-like, but it came out where we had the mash temperature had dropped to like 140 during mash, so we heated it back up, but it was one of those propane burners.
Yeah.
And this is before I had learned about how small millet really was.
Yeah.
It had fallen through the bottom of his false bottom.
Oh.
And so I had a burnt cake on the bottom.
You did.
But
they gave you some SRM and some roasted flavors.
Oh yeah, it was like a Belgian stout. It was awesome. I really loved it. It was like a Belgian imperial stout.
See, that was a happy mistake.
Oh yeah, I love those.
Were you able to duplicate it again, or you never tried?
Because
that's gonna be hard.
I've done variations of that beer, but I've never tried to do the same thing that I did. Because that was before I was really taking notes. I was like, let's just pour the kitchen sink in here and see what comes out of it.
Gotcha.
And so I was using sorghum, and I had done a mash with like 5 pounds of millet and 5 pounds of buckwheat. This is before I really understood about buckwheat even, and the fact that buckwheat is very similar to how oats behave, and that it can really kind of gum things up too. Yeah. So there's a lot of learning.
There's a sweet kind of nuttiness that comes from it.
Yeah. Buckwheats, I use it a lot now, and it really helps with like head retention. Like some of these beers I poured in front of you like 15 minutes ago, and they still have
15 minutes.
Yeah.
You can see. Well, you mentioned them now. Let's just talk about it. So, I don't know if you have names for the beers.
So this is the Summer's Garden Saison.
So when I smell it, I get this very herbal aroma.
Right.
And I told you this before.
Yep.
And then you told me what it is. So tell everybody what's in it. So, I take a little sip here.
So it's a partial. So it has mostly gluten-free grains like millet and buckwheat in it, as well as rice. But I also added buckwheat honey, chamomile, rose hips, as well as heather. And then I bittered it with middle fruit. So pretty much an herbal blast to the mouth from start to finish.
So I get the buckwheat, and I get the floral notes of the
right,
like the rose, right?
Yeah, the rose hips, and I also actually I forgot to mention I added some orange peel in there as well.
Yeah, I think there's near the backside you can get some of that.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of balancing it out, but there's something else you said there's in here because I said it's
heather.
Very herbal. Heather. Yeah. I think the heather gives it like this interesting herbal quality that it's hard to say anything but herbal. It's like this.
It's a tea-like astringency, but it's not
earthy, herbal kind of thing.
Yeah.
but it kind of grows on me.
Yeah, I kind of like it. It's well, saisons are easier to brew in the summer, so that's one of the reasons why I brewed it. But also, I kind of wanted that reminiscent of, long summer afternoon,
Yeah.
an easy drinking beer.
But I would tell you that but looking at it and tasting it, smelling it, and I've been trying to do it now. Sorry, you guys. I mean, I literally have been sitting for 15 minutes or something. But the long and the short are, it did have a nice white head, and it's still got some little legs on the glass here. But I literally wouldn't know that it was a gluten-free beer, and except for it's very herbal, but that has to do with the herbs you put in.
Right.
So
yeah, exactly.
it has nothing to do with the gluten-free.
Yeah, not too much conflict there. It's really just kind of to spurn a lot of the flavors that I'm looking for.
I think that my friends from New Agris would really like hanging out with you because
Awesome.
they make very herbal beers,
Very cool.
and I'm seeing some similarities there. So
Nice.
since you're doing beers and we want to get through this,
Yeah.
we're gonna get to this. And this is this an amber or is this?
So it's like I had brewed it like a Dunkel, but
Okay.
and a lot of the tastes that it elicits are very similar to, say, a Baltic Porter.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, it's Baltic Porters are dark beers that are brewed like porters but have lager yeast.
Lager. So you used a lager. Oh man, that's really nice. Especially, actually, I think this is better when it's warm.
Yeah, it's you got a lot more of the caramel, a lot more of the chocolate.
That really, to me, is like a Baltic Porter.
Yeah.
I get the nice balance of the roast and the lager yeast that makes me like a black IPA.
Oh yeah, very true.
Is enjoyable to me. A Schwartz beer is very enjoyable to me.
Yeah.
A Baltic Porter, they're all enjoyable to me because they're taking this lagering style along with something that I like from the ale side, essentially.
Yeah.
And they've put it together. Not unlike the 76 from Samuel Adams that we tried at HomebrewCon.
Yeah.
But that's a different thing because they mix them, they melt them afterwards. But I don't know why, it just made me think of that because this is
true
brewed this way, but this is very tasty.
Yeah, I'm actually drinking some of it myself. I really like this beer.
And I honestly would not know that wasn't that they didn't have gluten in there. So I mean, I don't know if you're trying to keep this proprietary or not, but what are you using in that one there?
So this is strictly just millet and buckwheat beer.
Really?
So I actually didn't, this is one of those beers that I was really proud of because typically gluten-free home brewers or brewers got to use a lot of rice hulls because you've got not a lot of husk on most of these gluten-free grains, and they're super, super tiny.
Yeah.
So in terms of drainage, there's a lot of channels that can be created, or like with buckwheat, it can gum the whole mash up.
Sure. So
it's really hard to pass water through it. So that's why they use a lot of rice hulls for drainage. This is a beer that I used 0 rice hulls in.
Wow.
So I'm pretty happy about that. It's no secret. Yeah, I talk about this all the time. 135 is a perfect protein rest for buckwheat. It really helps not only knock out a lot of that beta glucan because buckwheat, like oats, can make for a really cloudy beer. But you can pretty much see this is a clear beer.
That's clear. I mean, it is a nice. That's why I almost asked if it was an amber, but I can see that. I was going to say maybe it's a light porter, but
it has that reddish
Baltic
hue.
Porter, it's got that darkish reddish hue. If you can get through the light. On your side, you're not going to see it on the camera. I can see it in the light here.
Yeah, we got a light over here.
But it's beautiful. If you're watching this on YouTube, if you're listening on the air, then you're not going to see anything. But,
yeah, don't worry at all. It's clear.
But I'll tell you, that is really, really. It's enjoyable.
Yeah,
and it's got this nice sweetness on the backside that's not cloying, but
yeah,
and that's where I get to where almost like almost a nuttiness.
Yes.
Right.
Very true.
So. I hopefully my phone is still working because I just had some alarm here. Who knows what's going on? I've had issues, but all right. So the last one we have is an IPA here, right?
IPA.
Oh man, I get like
massive
total hop.
Yeah.
Oh, so what are you using the hops here? Because I get a flavor profile.
Yeah.
Where I'm getting like tropical citrus notes.
Oh yeah, this one.
Out the aroma.
I poured a lot into this one, so this one had. Let me pull the recipe over here. I have Chinook.
Is this the one you had at HomebrewCon?
No, but it's actually I did a little bit of a play on the same way that he did it. So his was called Endgame IPA.
Oh, you had another guy's.
And so he used Galaxy, Amarillo, Mosaic, and Yukonot.
Okay.
In the brew. So I decided to bring some of those same flavors with me in the same vein, like that tropical note, the traditional IPA hops and things like that. So I used Chinook on the bitter, Comet, Nelson Sauvin, Amarillo, and Equinox. So I used a couple
I
of the same
say
hops.
Equinox, but you say Equinox.
Yeah.
Tomato, but I think it's Equinox. But anyways, so you use that one. But it's interesting because you get a really nice flavor profile
Yeah.
from those hops.
It's interesting because this beer was a very easy brew day, very challenging ferment because it was right when it hit like the hot days. So I brewed this on July 15th.
Now, we'll say I get a little phenol on the backside.
Yeah, because I brewed a New World Strong Ale yeast with it, so that it was kind of trying to imitate like an English dry, but it really fermented more like a strong ale, like a Belgian strong ale. So you're gonna get a lot of that phenol from like a strong ale.
Yeah, some people are going to
yeast.
say they might not like that or maybe mark it down.
Well, that's the thing I wouldn't put it in a traditional IPA.
Yeah, so I might want to rethink the yeast, but I still think it's very good.
Well, I got it for free at HomebrewCon, so I went for it.
Yeah, but I'm going to say that. I'm going to say this just to say it, just because for me, I'm always talking about honesty with friends and any brewer.
Yeah.
Because to me, I don't like phenols in my beer for the most part, but some phenols are good. If you get pepper's a phenol. That can be nice in a beer.
That's true.
Plastic is a phenol. That is not nice in a beer. I'm not saying this is plasticky, but I'm just saying it's a strong phenolic.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's kind of almost in between those two.
Right.
And
if anything, it's more of that dry citrus.
Yeah. But it's more of the pithy side of that dry citrus.
You're right.
So that's where on the backside I'm like, it's not bad. It's just not as desirable.
Well, I know what went wrong with this one because I was having an issue controlling temperature.
Playing. Okay, you're still playing with it.
Yeah.
But so I'm not. What I'm saying is interesting because when I first tasted it, I wouldn't know, and I get that. But I've tasted many beers that are full of gluten and from professional brewers who get phenols in their beer.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm not saying it's a bad beer or it totally went wrong. I'm just saying I think there's a way you could improve on it.
Yeah.
Because I remember having the beers up there going, wow, I can't believe they're gluten-free. They're all on par and they're really good beers. But there's always things we can tweak and learn, right?
That's true, yeah.
And if someone is wanting to help you and they're give a constructive criticism, then I mean, I always tell people, do you want me to blow smoke up your ass or your butt? I'm sorry. Or be real with you, because I think if you're real with someone, it's going to be in a constructive way, and it's going to be like, I like this, but here's what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
Instead of saying this tastes like and then just putting someone down, because that's not it.
Well, no, I appreciate it.
And half those people don't know what they're doing anyways. They couldn't do anything better.
True.
But I do like it still. I would drink it. I'm not gonna throw it out.
Thanks.
But it's interesting that to me, even when I'm talking about it, you understand exactly what's happening and how you can tweak it. Because I'm telling you, the base of that and the flavor profile is all good, and when it hits in my front of tongue and all that, I'm enjoying it.
Oh yeah.
It's just a little bit of on the backside, and I know a lot of people who drink that and not know any difference.
Well, I'm surprised it's drinkable because it got all the way up to 86 on in the fermenter. Oh yeah. No, I was having a really bad day that day.
If you got to 86 in that, then that's a great beer.
Yeah. I'm
not even joking. Whoever's listening to this or watching this, that's a great beer, because if you got to 86, you should have had to throw that away. That is still enjoyable. It's profitable still. Yeah. I just am very sensitive to phenols.
No,
and most people aren't.
I love palates like that, because usually my friends are like, another great one, Bob, and I'm like, all right, are they blowing smoke because they get free beer? Or...
Yeah, that's the point. Listen, we're brewers. Brewers like people to enjoy what they make. We make it for that reason, and you love, but you still want honest feedback, and not everybody has a developed palate. All I will say is, I've been called a beer snob. I call myself a beer ambassador, and that's how I kind of got the name of the beer ambassador. People would say, "Oh, you're like an ambassador of beer," and so it just it came on because I would make friends with people in bars, and I just had a conversation and breweries, and I think beer brings people together.
Yeah.
But in our community, the reason we go to join homebrew clubs and do competitions and this kind of stuff is not because, oh, well, we think we're better than anyone else. No, we want feedback because we want to become better. Because
that's true.
I started brewing because I couldn't find the beers I wanted to taste in the market. Yeah. Now you can, because people say, you're crazy. What are you putting in your beer? And I'm like, well, I want to taste this and this fruit and that spice and this herb.
Yeah.
And people are like, that's not how you make beer. That's not traditional. I'm like, Well, yeah, it used to actually. If you go back a couple thousand years, it is traditional.
Yeah.
It's been the last few hundred years, maybe 500 years since the, and I'll say this wrong probably, but the Reinheitsgebot.
Reinheitsgebot?
Yeah,
There you go.
Reinheitsgebot laws. I always say it wrong, but when those two dukes said, "Oh, these are the only ingredients can be in a beer," because they found a beer from some brewing monks that they liked. They're like, "We like this so much, we're going to make a law that everybody has to make it like this."
Right. Yeah.
And so it limited things, and brewers got creative on how they could make styles through that. So it wasn't just one style.
Right.
But still, it was malt, which is either wheat or barley, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
You could find rye and some other stuff, but it was mostly that. And then you had hops and you had water, because it was magically fermented from the open fermentation, which they didn't know was yeast,
Yep.
right? And so now we know it's yeast, and then they changed it to do yeast. So the long and the short are, if you're watching this, it keeps showing me in my system, UI is not working. But the long and the short are Reinheitsgebot,
Right.
changed things, and now we're coming back to it. So I was pushing those things, and now the things that I was doing 9 to 10 years ago in a beer that people thought I was crazy,
Right. It's
including my
commonplace.
mentor, but I would still go through like a keg of beer, and everyone's like, "Well, I want more of that."
Yeah.
Now it's becoming more commonplace, but I think that's good, because homebrewers push the commercial edge,
Right. Well, we make.
which is what you're doing with gluten-free beer.
Right. It's like, make me want to come to your brewery, basically.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is while I definitely respect the effort of a lot of the people that are doing the whole gluten-free thing, or saying gluten reduced.
Yeah.
It's great, but we can do more, and that's, I think, one of the things that's really exciting. I'll cheers some
I'm
of the
gonna cheers.
sparkling water.
So listen, I'm holding up. If you can see, I have a spot glass, and it's long live and prosper. So I'll do that to you. But the long and the short is he also makes sparkling water, and he gave it to me. I'm like, this is some kind of dark berry, and I was like, is it blueberry or something? He's like, no, it's blackberry
Yeah.
with some lemon. But I'm telling you, I'm not a big sparkling water unless it's hop water. But this one is pretty fantastic, and it's really good to cleanse your palate in between beers.
Yeah. I like it. It also helps me not get
No.
too drunk on weeknights.
Yeah, because you should pace yourself.
Yeah, with this beer right in the living room, it can be dangerous sometimes.
For sure. So, I mean, right now you have 4 taps.
Yep.
You told me about an amazing thing. We should give a shout out to your friend who basically gave you that. But
Yeah, my friend Jet is an incredible guy.
and just recently got married.
Just recently got married. Hey, Laurel,
Hey,
what's up?
Jet, listen to the show today. I want to say thanks that you basically made Bob into a home brewer, essentially. Because he
Yeah.
got this kegerator in his living room, and we can sit there and drink from it. But
Yeah.
but you have 4 taps, and you have this wonderful, honestly, this blackberry
Blackberry lemon.
sparkling water, or water, sorry.
Yeah, sparkling water. It's it's nice. I mean, I've
I'm
already
gonna
got
say
the
wider
tanks.
because I'm saying wiser with you earlier. A wiser.
Yeah, you owe me is that a
know.
sizer? Or
I'm going to give you a
Weiser?
sizer, which is
Okay.
which is a mead and a cider together, and then I don't know where I'm getting Widmer's. I have no. My
Okay.
brain is fried right now.
Yeah.
Anyways, been a long day, but I think there's really 3 solid beers. I've had some other beers. I don't remember. What were you pouring at Homebrew Con?
So I
Because
think
I had
you
some
probably
really
had
good stuff there.
So we had a Hell's that was brewed by by Ed.
Yeah,
That
Ed's
one was
Hellas
super
is good.
clean.
Yeah.
Love that beer. The one that you probably tried from me was the XBA, which was an all extract.
I do remember
extra
that.
pale ale.
But that was very good.
Yeah, that was a lot of people's favorite beer, which I was surprised by because that was all extract.
So
It wasn't even all
where
grain.
do you get the extracts for that?
So, actually locally in Costa Mesa, down the street at Windsor Homebrew.
Oh,
we s-
Windsor has gluten-free extracts?
Yeah, so they have sorghum there.
Wow, the
Then they've
sorghum.
got honey and stuff like that there,
Okay.
and then they've got rice syrup solids and some other stuff. He's also got the Belgian candy syrups and
Nice.
the rock
Yeah,
candy.
I know about those.
So stuff
so
like
you
that.
just took that kind of stuff and
Yeah,
made the XBA.
yeah.
Man, that was a fantastic beer.
I wanted to. It was. I did a seminar at HomebrewCon, so I wanted to show that you can do
Yes.
this kind of style of brewing multiple ways.
And so that's part of why we met too. Why don't you
Right.
talk about how you got involved in HomebrewCon in your first time going
Yeah.
and being a speaker?
Yeah,
'Cause
that's
that to
kinda
me is
cool.
impressive.
Well, for me, I was always worried about going because I was like, well, I get there and then what do I drink? And then I'm like, oh, well, there's cider and mead. And then I'm like,
Yeah.
but I got into home brewing because
I like beer.
I like beer. So So it was tough. And I'd
by
already,
the way, cider and meat are always gluten free.
yeah, unless they're using some sort of adjunct or additive that has it, but that's usually never the case. But yeah, so I was like, well, I've been doing this long enough, and I've never heard of anybody doing a seminar on gluten-free homebrewing, so let's put a bid in. And it was really interesting because that's how I got connected to Joe, who's in Portland, who started the Zero Tolerance Gluten-Free Homebrewing Club just this year.
I didn't know there was a club.
Right? So yeah.
Did I meet Joe at Homebrew?
You probably did, because it was his Endgame IPA that you drank.
Oh, that was a great IPA.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah, it was
So
one of my favorites.
that's how you got involved with them and poured at their booth then?
He contacted AHA saying, hey, I'm looking to start a club. And Matt, who was at Homebrew Con, or no, not Homebrew Con, but he's part of the AHA for that matter.
Matt Bowling?
Yeah, Matt Bowling.
Okay. Yeah, he's the West Coast representative.
Yeah, he's
makes
the man.
things happen for us, yeah.
So he goes, well, have you met this guy, Bob?
Yeah.
And Joe's like, no, what are you talking about? He's like, well, Bob's doing a seminar.
It's gluten-free Bob. You have like a new name.
Yeah, I'm the
GFB.
I'm the guy.
GFB. It's gluten-free Bob.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so yeah, he's like, so you should meet this guy then if you're starting a homebrew club, because he's going to teach on gluten-free homebrewing at HomebrewCon. And so we got connected, and he was like, yeah, join the Facebook group. I'm going to put it together. We're going to have our meeting at Groundbreaker Brewing, which is in Portland, which is really close to where he lives in Beaverton. And
so you flew up for that, or you went?
Well, I was just on
the
phone for that one.
Oh, I see.
But at the same time, there was so the cool thing about Groundbreakers, they also did a homebrew competition too.
Oh, nice.
And so we've done stuff like that. I think we're doing Zoom conference now or something like that.
But that's cool that they're including you to do that. But they did a competition and you placed?
Yeah, I placed in that. And so then Ghostfish Brewing in Seattle actually picked up that recipe because Groundbreaker owns the first place recipe. So they took mine, which was the second place, which is a box style lager.
I love a good Bach.
Yeah,
it's hard to find them recently.
Well, I like Bachs. I like them too, and you're right. They're very hard to find.
Bach, double Bach.
Yeah, so this one is it's very traditional Bach, but it also has a lot of characteristics of Maybach, in the fact that it's a little bit lighter.
My tomato. Why does that keep doing that? All right, I'm just gonna keep hitting that weight. All right.
Right, and so. But yeah, I brewed it with Hallertauer and Nelson Sauvin hops.
Oh, nice! Those are good hops.
So, yeah, you can't go wrong. And so yeah, traditional like lager style yeast, and did the traditional stuff. And we brewed it on July 4th actually at Ghostfish, and they just submitted it for their Pro-Am submission.
That's awesome.
So yeah.
So in a short period of time, you were making some big waves.
Yeah, things went nuts. I've been on the Four Brewers podcast. I was on Beersmith recently, and then I was just last week on the Basic Brewing podcast with Ed and Joe from the Gluten Free Homebrewing Club.
So if I had recorded at Homebrew